Welcome, everyone, to the Center for Healing podcast. I'm here today with Susanna Marie. It's great to have you here, Susanna.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Matt.
So, Susanna, I'll let you introduce yourself, actually, like and what you do, what
Okay.
you're about, rather than me do it.
Yeah, introduce myself. I'm a spiritual teacher and I'm really teach an integrated type of spirituality, one that includes not only waking up to what we really are in truth, free of this overlay of the conditioning that we carry, what is always here, the freedom that's always here, the natural state as they call it in Zen, and then the integration of that within the humanity and within one's life, and how does that live and how does that move and function. And so I teach courses and groups and individual sessions, and I've been doing this for a good while, many years. I'm a mother of two young adults. I live in Northern California, and I love to garden, and I love my dog, and um, and I love being alive. I love being alive, and I love continuing to learn and grow and deepen. Um, and I really do care about um, all life, human beings and plants and the earth, and I care. I just have a caring. My heart cares, and my heart hurts too for where we are on the planet and where we stand right now. So, and I let myself feel the fragility of this experience of what caring actually brings is a vulnerability and sensitivity. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks, Susanna. And so,
Yes.
like the term awakening, it's so butchered, and it means so many different things. And obviously, you come from that more like traditional, term of recognizing our true nature, versus waking up from one form of conditioning to like one belief system to another belief system. Um, so when you talk about awakening, what exactly is it that you mean? And I know you kind of already covered it, but what is awakening? Just to set some context for the.
Yeah, awakening is is really truly remembering what we are at in our essence. And it's kind of like a prior to. So prior to the confusion that has overlaid with even the sense of being a separate self, being a me. There's nothing wrong with having a me or being a me. But if it creates confusion as to what we are in truth, and it creates a feeling of being separate from others and separate from Mother Earth and all life, then that to me is actually um, creates disconnection. And disconnection is a big problem because then there's first, it begins with a disconnection internally and feeling separate within and creates a dynamic of feeling like there's something wrong, and that usually that feeling is something's wrong with me. That's the where it leads to something's wrong with me, but really what's wrong is that there's been identification with the idea that we are separate, and that's kind of like this virus that's passed on collectively, and it's innocently passed on. But when you consider that we really are actually a part of life and we're one with Mother Earth and nature, and that the fact that we've forgotten that is really a big problem. And it shows how far out of alignment we've come to even to really not even know that we're one with this environment that we emerged out of. So awakening is actually called a remembering. Another word would be remembering. So that it's kind of like this return back to what we are in truth prior to these beliefs and the conditioning and the veils, they call them the veils, covering over what you really, really are in truth, whole and complete and one with everything, one with Mother Earth, one with within yourself, whole and complete. So just feeling divided inside is what the journey of awakening helps reconcile and heal and mend. And it's a real thing, and it really has an effect. And once there's this understanding of what we really are, which is not separate from all that is, it does this outward movement where it starts to want to heal and reconcile all the parts inside that became sort of flavored with that feeling of separation, because it has an effect. Separation has an effect not only on our in our minds, but on the body, in the psyche. So there's a lot of returning back to remembrance that takes place over time.
Mm.
So awakening is really a journey. It's not just a moment in time, it's a journey of remembering.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's like various kinds of awakenings, like initially the awakening can be like outside of time,
Mm-hmm.
timeless space. And that could be, in Zen they call that kind of opening like Satori, where we just kind of open up and disidentify from the world of time and being a separate, isolated
Mm-hmm.
me. But I'd love to talk to you about this. That can end up, if we kind of stay in that. In Buddhism, they kind of call it emptiness, where we kind of wake up and out of our human experience and out of the me, out of identification with the separate self. But that can end up as a kind of dissociative landing place, if we stay there, and especially if we're looking to t the same teachings that kind of help us to affirm and keep referencing that
Mm-hmm.
place outside of it's kind of outside of experience, we could call it eternity, the timeless dimension,
Mm-hmm.
or the now. And so I just what's your perspective on that, and what have you seen being a teacher of people kind of getting stuck there and
Yeah. Well, there's something true and real to wanting to wake up out of what's lost and conditioned and confused. So there are real that pointing and teachings that have been around for thousands of years. There's validity to it. And it's like waking up to that which is transcendent, waking up to the fact that we're really truly spirit in form. Yeah. And it's almost like it has to disidentify from the sticky nature of form, of believing that we're all the things that we believe that sort of that cover over our true nature. So this kind of stepping out of the quagmire of identification, the sticky goo of identification. So there's something really valid about it, and it feels really free and it feels really good. And and I think there's actually a real true point to it, and but it's only half of what we're really all about. We are spirit and we are form. In Buddhism, they talk about emptiness and form, that they are actually one whole, two sides of one whole. So emptiness would be waking up out of, and to remember who you really are truthfully without this overlay of, we all know what that overlay feels like. It feels
yeah.
really, it can make one very anxious actually and unhappy, and deep, the trauma of even separation is a trauma, by the way, believing in separation, living it out. So but then is that does one stay there in the outer space and look at the earth and all the humanity and our own humanity from a distance and stay there? Well, some do. and some want to remain there and continue spouting out that this is what freedom is. This is the whole goal of realization, the whole goal of enlightenment, or whatever terms you want to use. But that's a very incomplete, as you know, an incomplete understanding. A more complete understanding would be then, how does this live here? So, okay, perhaps one really has then a really solid sense of that emptiness of your that you are spirit, that you are free, regardless, that you're timeless, that you were really, some part of you was never born, some part of you was never, is not going to die. It's an eternal spirit is eternal. And um it is completely completely free of everything that's taking place. So it feels really nice, but it wants to return here in terms of how does this live? And that's where it can get a little gritty and a little messy. And maybe one could use a little help sometimes, because that landing, coming back to Earth and landing, depending on how much content is here
The karma,
and how much material. What's that?
just leftover karma, like through the body and contractions.
Yeah. All the wounds, all the conditioning, all the stuff that you do with your work and offer, you
Yeah.
know about it. So there, it's understandable that people are really tempted to want to stay in the camp of the what's untouched, just not even re-entering the gravity from outer space, re-entering the gravity of Mother Earth and the karma, as you put it, and what's remaining. And it by the way, it you can't run away from content. You can't run away from what's here. Eventually, it's going to pull you down, whether it's this life or if you believe in lifetimes, another life. It's going to pull you down and ask for reconciliation.
Yeah, and just like as you were talking, like it came to mind, I was kind of reflecting back on different periods through my own process. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll be so swung, like deeply in devotion to the transcendent dimension, like just like okay, I experience it as being as devotion to God and just kind of being so far up and out and just like how far can I go? Like how far can I go into that space, and I was thinking about the term like everything's welcome, and it's like even that served a purpose, like it really did, there's a lot of like we were chatting just before we hit record, and like we can either swing too far this way or too far this way, but to let the kind of pendulum swing, as it
Mhm.
kind of needs is a different thing because otherwise what can happen is it's like maybe someone, or maybe for a period of time, we really need to be focusing on transcending and disidentifying and moving beyond that.
Mhm.
So then we've got a ground of capacity to then come back after. And so, that like as you were talking, I was thinking, there's no prescriptive advice because everyone needs something different in each moment. And maybe what needs to unfold organically is
Mhm.
maybe they move to more to transcendence for a period and then they come to welcoming and then maybe they move back. And it's kind of like rather than fixating on it meant to be a certain way, maybe we can just learn to kind of trust that inner compass, that inner kind of GPS and move where
Yeah,
it.
beautiful. And maybe do some transcending and then some imminent work, some work within this being here. And maybe there will be more of a like, who am I really? And, there could, like you said, a pendulum. So a swinging, and it's very organic. And I think what's important throughout this whole thing is learning how to trust and follow guidance, inner guidance,
Mm. Yeah,
as to instead of an outward a teaching, like this is how I'm supposed to do it.
yeah, 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 because it isn't prescriptive. And if you look at like, like some really brilliant teachers, like they'll tell one person one thing and then they'll tell the next person something completely different that seems to contradict what they told the last person,
Mhm.
and it's because like, each person is in a different place and
Mhm.
there is like a ripening process that happens, like in a maturation. And for that to happen, it might need something different than the other person. And so, for a period, after I had that initial shift into emptiness, into the transcendent, I was really focused on those teachings, and it's like this is it, and I feel like that helped it become abiding, it really helped it mature and become, immovable, like it became always there. And but then at a certain point, I think this is around the time I met you, my son was born and I'm standing there kind of in space, like nothing, like that kind of identity of being emptiness. And I just intuitively knew, like, no, like if this is the end, like I don't want it. Like it's not even that good.
Yeah, it doesn't help me with my newborn son
Yeah, exactly,
or your relationship.
exactly. And because, I had a life of, I think, a pretty severe trauma, so much resistance to coming back. Like, oh, I don't want to go back there, you know.
Yeah, understandable. Like
Yeah,
that's like going from a warm, yummy womb to a cold plunge.
yeah, yeah,
If
exactly.
there's a lot of trauma and yeah, so you do bit by bit, right? I mean, hopefully, and with some help. We do, both of us believe in nervous system support and help with trauma and help with somatic work, whatever, support at that stage is really, really important.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so, some people, need that up and out movement, and there's plenty of teachings focused just directly
Oh
on,
yeah. Yeah, but where it gets in trouble, right, Matt, is when those teachers with those teachings, or even the student misinterprets, possibly teachings, um, feels like that's all that you have to do and just stay there.
yeah,
Just stay in the absolute, stay in the transcendent. Don't come back into the garbage can. I heard one well-known, famous alive teacher say, I'm not going to name him, say the emotions are the garbage can. Don't go into the garbage can.
I know who that is.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that was some years ago. So hopefully things have changed. I don't know if they have. But regardless, the point is not to make that person wrong, but it's that teaching is being broadcasted and taken in by very trusting, devoted human beings who are getting a lot of good stuff from that teacher, say, or from the Advaita kind of teaching, but it's not going to help them with then integration, which isn't too far away from the realization of transcendence. It's from the healthy trajectory and evolution is to go from I am that, I'm spirit, I'm whatever, consciousness to and it's here imminently and how does it live. It should really be doing that, and if something along the way holds it up, I mean it can last a while to where it even a few years, say, where it stays in the transcendent. Maybe there's just a really deep cooking there,
Yeah,
can't say what's right or wrong, but eventually that it should lean over into the other half of what the divine or God is, which is it's everything. It's it's made of it's pure consciousness, what God is made of, what I don't attribute any kind of sex to God. Um, and it's obviously creation. It's the uncreated and it's the creation. It's creation. It's obviously everything. It can't be separate. So if it
omnipresent.
doesn't lean, yes, omnipresent. And if it doesn't lean into its creation and want to make this conscious, and conscious also means healing, if it to make it conscious, then it's just like it's just half, it's like a boat with one rudder
Yeah, 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 yeah,
or whatever, one paddle, and it's going to go in circles.
yeah, yeah,
You can see it, right?
yeah,
They're
yeah.
doing it year after year, going in circles. People, well, even well-intentioned people, It's just it's a misunderstanding, but it can have huge consequences because it's a very precious life,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And huge consequences, like for people who have, significant wounding and all that sort of stuff, because there's these over
Yeah,
romanticized ideas that that kind of awakening, it's just like you've got no issue anymore. But it's not you've got no issue, you've moved beyond your issues. You've moved to
yeah,
where there are none, and
right.
so the first part of the process is a kind of negation, like not
Mhm.
this, not that, netty netty, and where we kind of move beyond, like this is not what I am, I am one with what's beyond all of that. And but then there's like the process of re-inclusion. So it's like, oh, and this and this and this, And so that's the part I think gets missed. It's like we can negate ourselves out of existence,
Uh-huh.
but then the part that gets missed is the re-inclusion of existence,
Yeah.
and I think like, and I think the internet's such a huge problem, like because people will take a teaching and apply it to their experience where it may not actually be relevant, to where they're at, like teachings of inclusive, and this is just in the context of awakening, not necessarily just about about trauma healing and meeting our wounds and all that sort of stuff, but when it comes to people interested in non-duality and awakening, it may not be relevant to where they're at, that certain teacher or teaching, as we were talking. And so it may swing their pendulum in a direction or they make their orientation what it's like using the wrong fertilizer for the fruit tree, it might not bear fruit for where they're at. And so it is so unique, you know.
Very true. Yeah, and then you have you and I were talking before we went on record, as you said earlier. We were talking about that the opposite, that one can get lost in embracing being the humanity
Mm,
without having a nice footing in the truth of the matter, which is that we are both. We're actually free and made of space and empty of content in the center. They've even proven scientifically, right?
yeah, yeah,
Within the nucleus of the atom, right?
yeah,
That there's that there it's empty.
yeah,
And so that means all matter, which is empty at its core, which means we are, because we're made of matter. We're empty at the in the core of us.
yeah.
And so if that is not understood in some, at some point along this human journey, and it's not for everyone to go in that direction. Some people that's just not their path at all, and I respect it. But if it's interesting to someone to realize what's really true here in their true nature, and they just feel off, they want to discover and explore what they really are, without having an understanding that there's something that's open and free and and unidentified with what's here. when when we're just living a life and we're feeling a feeling, we're going through our lives, there will be this deep identification. It's kind of like Narcissus, leaning over, looking at his reflection and getting lost in it
Yeah,
and
yeah.
forever being lost in its own view of itself. And it's a trance.
Mm,
It becomes a trance. So then one can get entranced. And you see it all the time, people believing all the time in something that's not true, including themselves being who they are.
mm,
So without having an understanding that there's this, and experiencing, and that's one of the values of going down this journey of spiritual awakening, is gaining that understanding so that this life can be lived and embraced without getting lost in it. There's no reason to be lost in it. Being lost is not a spiritual experience. It's just pure identification. Being lost, so there's now this kind of movement, right? Of just embrace your humanity and welcome everything. Welcome your sadness. Welcome your pain. Now, I get it. I get it. That's actually powerful, and it could be super healing and super valuable, but it doesn't make you free of it per se. What
It,
is it that's welcoming is the question then. What is it that's welcoming?
yeah, it won't lead to awakening, you know.
It won't lead to understanding that it will continue be making it to where one is lost in the content of the world. So you will be the sadness. You won't sadness won't just be here and deeply felt and open to and welcomed. You will be the sadness. Fear
Identification.
just won't be here and allowed to be without being glued and stuck to it. It's allowed to actually be. Anything's allowed to be
Mm,
and welcomed, but you will be the fear. So without having that understanding of what's empty within content, we are then lost in experience.
yeah, yeah. So it's being able to recognize our fundamental consciousness whilst at the same time feeling our humanity, you know. And it's like I say this to clients and I say it in our trainings too. Like if you were your anger, if you were your fear, if you were your sadness, as soon as it passed, you would disappear also. You know, so there's something that remains, you know, there's a part of you that is always aware of experience. And, you know, I
Yes.
think what we're talking about is the reconciliation of being able to hold both those truths at once, you know, being able to hold that relative experience whilst
Yes.
feeling the presence at the same time.
Right, right. Because and that's why they call it non-duality. And I don't even
Exactly.
say that I'm a non-dual teacher because the people have put everything in boxes. What is that? That's this, that's their ideas of it. But really true non-duality, what it is not two. So
Exactly.
that means that spirit's on one side and our divine nature is on one side, and then our human experience is over here. No, it's like you said, the reconciliation of it to where they're both here.
Yeah.
What's always here in the midst of, and that which is here in the midst of is not lost in what it's encountering. So that means it can actually be truly present to it. When
Exactly.
something's not lost, it's able to show up fully.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like we can only fully be present to our experience from that vantage point. And at a certain point, you know, it is non-dual, like they're felt as one. You know, it's not like our experience is no longer fragmented. And it'd be good to kind of start to go in that direction of that welcoming and including process into unity because it is for a while, you know, I know in my experience there was like presence. You know, there was that dimension of being, and then there was my humanity, and then it was like the big self and the little self. But eventually, it kind of like a car crusher, you know, it just kind of crushed itself together, you know, and until it's kind of like the humanity, and there's not two dimensions anymore. Like there never actually was, you know, it just appeared that way at different stages, you know, and so then that is what we would call it not two, you know? And
Mhm.
what was that like for you, that process where you started welcoming and including your humanity, that unification or unity as you call it, you know? Because I know you talk a lot about meeting the wounds and meeting the pain from that vantage point and how things were included and
Mhm.
reconciled.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for me, I had done a lot of internal healing work prior to the deep awakening into emptiness, into that transcendent space we were talking about. And it had kind of been sort of a pendulum in that way that it would be like I would taste emptiness, I would taste unity, and it would be kind of doing that for a while. This kind of um, I'm not my full experience. I'm not a separate self, and it would be real, feel it, and then it would re-enter, and there would be sticky again, and I'd be fully identified again as the separate self, and believing, for instance, that I was a victim or something. So once the the deep awakening into emptiness had taken place, and it came, what really spearheaded it was losing my brother.
Mm.
Yeah, because I like my defense mechanism to the disintegration of things being the way that I thought, how life was going to be for me. Just having like such a kind of like an earth-shattering fissure, in my life that just it made my mind and my being not be able to continue imagining that all this is really a solid, real thing. It just broke it apart.
Mm.
And so I fell into that chasm and I just just let myself, I just couldn't help it. I fell into the the un that which isn't that's unconditioned, rather the unconditioned, the uncreated. I couldn't manufacture a belief system anymore that life was going to be a certain way for me. Everybody has sort of their last card in terms of that kind of break from believing that we keep trying and trying to make life work. If only we did this, if only we did that. But I couldn't make life work anymore for myself. And because losing him, I don't know, maybe it was predestined in some way that I would because I was heading I was already having in and out of types of awakenings, but this really cinched it. So after the emptiness period really lived through me for a few years time, deep emptiness, the unity when it came in, it was like I guess that return phase had gone far back into the unborn that when it came back, it went really far into the created. And I knew myself as everything. And like the bird and the tree and the plum it was eating, I was all of it. It was kind of fantastical. It's like they say these big awakening experiences. Some people have them like that, and some are more progressive. And so when I came back to really being here like more fully than I had ever known before, it was like these places that were waiting inside to be embraced were there, like
Mm.
the grief of losing my brother, the grief of the planet or whatever. Um, I had a separation from the kid's father, and so there was grief around that, but there was also some anger,
Yeah, of
you
course.
know. There was some anger because he left us and, left me with two young children without adequate support. That's just the truth of it,
Mm.
without adequate support, and left it on my shoulders. And so I was in a full blown awakening. It was a trip to be doing this and be caring for two beautiful, innocent, young, 3 and 5 beings, and be at first in the emptiness journey and then in the unity. And so, but coming back in gave me the blessing and the grace to be able to go deeply into something and not get lost there. So it was like welcoming this feeling of anger and even feeling like a victim,
Yeah.
because there was some victim energy there. And I realized, for example, around be feeling like a victim, for me at least, um, that eventually, as I went into it, I realized I was just hurting myself.
Mm.
And it didn't let him off the hook of what he was doing, or you know what I mean? It wasn't like it was giving a free pass
Yeah.
to to the reality of the conditioned reality of things. They were still what they were. But internally, um, I couldn't pit myself against myself and create more pain by believing that I was a victim. Yes, circumstances were what they were, and it was yucky. It was bad. And just sitting with the isness of things versus trying to squiggle out. and deny or hide or make a story about it.
Yeah.
Sitting with the isness of things was had its own beauty, believe it or not, in a strange way. It had its own beauty. And it wasn't like I wished I had signed up for this experience per se. But within it, of course, there were many beautiful moments. I was taking care of two beautiful children, you know? And I in many ways I had a very blessed, graced life. I was healthy, in a beautiful environment. Um, so there are much worse conditions, as we know, out there. But so I had my own hell realms to work with. And in Tibetan Buddhism, you might call it, they call it bardos. The bardos are actually here. Bardos meaning states of consciousness that just are hellish,
Yeah.
or realities that are hellish. So in a way, it was kind of, there was some hellish aspects to it. But when you really let yourself stop and be in any kind of experience, it, as I think you alluded to it earlier, when you stop and rest and don't move from any kind of experience, then that which is free within it is simultaneously there. And honestly, it was a in that way, it was a beautiful time.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful, beautiful time. And it seasoned me. I mean, life has seasons, seasons us all, but it seasoned me to be able to meet experience from then on. And it can, whenever something would come up, there would be an ability arose of not needing to move away from any experience.
Yeah, beautiful. And so it's like kind of going through like into the emptiness and as you said, giving up that last card. It's kind of like a crucifixion, our own personal crucifixion, like dying to ourselves and then, being reborn and coming back as that, knowing our true nature. And
Mm.
then, you talk about that capacity, that you developed to be able to meet experience from that standpoint, without getting lost or identified with it, being able to.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's funny because it's like it's not the same as before because it transmutes things back into itself, It's like when you're sitting with a feeling, say it's a feeling of anger or grief, and you stay with it from that standpoint of presence, being presence, not just being present, but being presence. It's kind of like it recognizes, like you stay with it and you start to feel the emptiness within the actual human
Mhm.
experience. Wow, so
Exactly.
it unifies and doesn't even transform it back into itself because it always was itself, but it recognizes, you go through that experience of transformation. And so, that it sounds like that unity process just really kicked off, through that period for you. And that's really, what they call oneness. It's
Mhm.
completely different to just realization, because it's an inclusive process where it's like we look at something, even the subtlest sensation in our body, and we feel its essential nature as one with the totality, and ourselves.
Beautiful. Yeah, well put.
Amazing. And so as that kind of as you went through that, what was it like to be able to welcome and meet your humanity in that way? And I'd love to also talk about the somatic aspect because I know you were kind of organically somatically oriented without, kind of teaching to take you there. You just kind of developed that yourself.
What was the first question?
Let's put them together. So welcoming the somatic dimension,
Yeah, welcoming the somatic dimension. Well, you just described it of how of there's a process that of being able to go into what's right here. And it's something that one can learn. And I taught myself, but not everybody, it won't arise naturally for everyone. It can be helpful to have a guide and a pointing. I'm a sensing type. And so what I mean by that, we even after deep understanding, realization, and even when oneness blooms in the heart, the mind realizes the heart and knows itself as one with all things, right? In an intimate way. Even after that takes place, we still will have our personal kind of predominant ways of perceiving reality. And like it could be for for some, it might be through the mind, that they're perceiving reality more still from this center of intelligence, a thinking kind of person. But it'll be liberated and but there may still be lots of thoughts and thinking uh, but it does, hopefully won't cover over what has been realized. And then with sensing, I'm a sensing type, and a sensing type from the beginning, from when I was born. So sensing type for me, what that meant, how it translated is that I wasn't so much of a thinking type. I
Mm.
didn't really think with thoughts and words in the same way. I just felt and sensed. But that can also be sticky. You can be unliberated in your sensing in
Mm.
this in the way that it can be lost in the content, and it'll be just as lost in identification as the mind could be lost.
Mm. Yeah.
So so through the unity experience and going through unity for a good 9 years, really truly, that the sensing came on board and it was used as a way of encountering the content and helping it alchemize, I suppose. So I would feel into, we kind of, the word feeling and sensing are so close. The way that I would define it, and maybe you can define it too, if you have some different definition or an addition to it, is that feeling is it actually contains some labeling.
Yeah.
You know? Sensing is more vibrational. When you lean into sensation, it's deeper than having a linear understanding of what you're encountering. It's energetic. Would
Exactly.
you say? Yeah.
Like the felt sense, pure sensation is like so close to naked experiencing, versus feeling is like a superimposed layer above pure sensation. Because, say we get a feeling or an emotion and we label anger, you can go deeper than that into the felt sense of anger.
Hmm.
But you can't go deeper than the felt sense of anger into the emotion, So it's like a layer closer to
Hmm.
reality, actuality. And the felt sense is always immediate. It's here, right here. So, the felt sense can really be a doorway into presence. And if you go into the deepest core of felt sense, you will find pure consciousness, being
There you go.
made of the same substance that we have recognized the fundamental I as. That's
Mm.
the unification. You're going into experience so deeply that you recognize its essential nature, and its essential nature is one with ours. So the somatic dimension is, it's for me, it's been foundational to the unity process.
Yeah. And as you know, the the journey of going into something in a sensory way when you feel called to that something's calling inside to be met, to be focused on. Let's say there's some fear, or uncomfortableness, and there's this leaning in that takes place when you it's a love affair, the heart blooms and it wants to know itself. It wants to embrace, doesn't want to leave anything behind. So there's this leaning in out of love and wanting to encounter what its own nature there, what it is, and curious, like, what is that? What is that vibration there that is feeling out of sync and off kilter? And it does it with sort of an innocence in the sense that it's not doing it to accomplish something, because like, there's not a goal in it. The real way that what you just described takes place, that where there's a deep healing and also a release of some kind, because it knows itself as consciousness, as that, and it's all very intuitive. It's not a process. It's
Mm.
not a process that one goes in and sit with the goal that this
Yeah,
is what I'm going to do.
I'm gonna make
Because
that.
because I remember I at first I had learned how to do this for
Yeah,
myself, and I was applying it to everything that was arising. And there was this moment in time when I realized that I was using it like a tool.
yeah, yeah,
And it and I kind of got in over my head. Like, with once I like the way that I realized that was a good moment, was like an aha moment, because I had turned it into a thing.
yeah,
And when you turn something into a thing, then it's solidifying, and it contains again separation.
yeah, yeah. So it's no longer.
There's this tool that
Yeah,
I'm using, like, with something that's here. That means there's two things happening, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean.
So
Eh,
there was this aha and like a deeper falling, like, oh my God, I cannot save myself.
It's like a
I,
layer of the will.
the layer of the will, like, truthfully, the truth is that there is no escaping the situation of life. No tool, no matter, I got really good at it. It gave me lots of freebies, like you can believe in this tool for a while. It's actually doing something. But
Well,
in the end, I bumped up against my own, like belief of, like, that I'm still a somebody that's doing something.
yeah, I'm still separate from my experience.
Yeah. And it's all just this great Houdini act. It's like the intelligence of life really wants us to just know ourselves as life living,
Mm.
and not a separate somebody living life. And so it's going to, you know, um, it's going to ring a bell and say, no,
Yeah,
you can't get away with that anymore. It's not in your best. That's not even true anymore.
yeah, and that's kind of what it's like, being repeatedly humbled in that way. It's like
Mm.
something will work for a while, and as long as we're using something as a tool, it kind of deadens that natural and organic curiosity and explorative kind of orientation of our nature itself. Like when it becomes a tool, it becomes more mechanical, like less organic. And it's like we can use something for a while and then, something will happen. It's like, oh, it's not working. And then it's like,
Yeah,
underneath that is always that sense of like helplessness, like, oh, there's nothing I can do to make something happen, you know?
exactly.
And then
And that's the end of that energy stream. And it says something new, something free, more free, something freer is really what's happening here. And
yeah,
because you turned it into a something, that's what a tool is.
exactly. And it's kind of like that moment of Christ on the cross, like of helplessness, like not my will, but thy will be done. We hit our own, that's like repeated crucifixions, like where we hit
Yeah.
helplessness. And then it's like, I used to say it's like a house of mirrors. Like we try to step this way, smack our heads, step that way, smack our heads, step that way, smack our heads. Anywhere we turn, we smack our head into a mirror. Eventually we collapse on the floor. "Ah, I can't do it. And then the floor opens up and we're free. Uh,
Exactly. Or like you get a taste, like I'll give it an example for people. It's like, okay, so there's a period of time when you open up to spirit, to truth, and you start feeling like you're in a flow state. There's actually a period of time where that can be.
honeymoon.
And there's like, and then it's like, and we've also heard maybe some teachings or whatever, that realization, spiritual awakening is a big flow. It's always flow.
Mhm.
So we believe that, and we're tasting it, but then guess what? It's going to end.
Yes.
and something else wants to reveal itself because you know what? Truth is not any one experience. So
No.
the flow is a type of experience within reality, but reality is encompasses all experiences. So it's not going to remain any one thing. And so then there can be this destabilization. Oh, I've lost my awakening. I'm not in flow anymore. It's just one
Yeah.
example. And then, unfortunately, then, you're looking on YouTube, let's say, and it says awakening is flow all the time, and there's never any suffering. All suffering comes to end. And it's like, wait, I'm not in flow anymore. And wait, there's suffering here. Does that mean there's no awakening? Well, guess what? I will, I cannot say there's no suffering here. I
Yeah.
can say that there's not a separate self experiencing suffering.
Mm.
I can say that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I can't say that suffering is not here. And that would just be such a lie because we are one with everything, and suffering exists somewhere. And our bodies are connected on a larger level, collective level, like we share a body on another level. As long as suffering is somewhere, there's going to be suffering here. And there could also be suffering here because there's pain. There could also be suffering here because someone I love is not well.
Yeah.
But there won't be a sticky center inside where I am suffering. I am the suffering. It's more suffering is, and there's no reason to not have it be here either, because why push anything away?
Yeah, it's included. And I heard it so I can't remember who said it. I heard it somewhere, but um when the Buddha talked about the end of suffering, he used the term dukkha. And apparently suffering is a pretty tr poor translation of that
Mm.
term. What would be a better translation would be a sense of deficiency or lack or incompleteness,
Okay. Yeah, the suffering that comes maybe out of believing in being separate.
Yeah, the feeling of incompleteness, like the feeling that something's wrong, the
Yeah.
feeling that something's wrong, and but we attribute, especially in the West, suffering it
Mhm.
takes on a completely different meaning. And I think we put our own definition on what that kind of word means, because
Oh, yeah, it sounds like we do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so it's
It's
interesting the
It's
mistrans.
so ridiculous, Matt. I mean, what we see, out being promoted out there to
Yeah,
where, and it causes a lot of confusion and pain for people.
yeah,
Like, oh, as long as I'm suffering, that means that there's no realization.
yeah,
But it's not. It's like suffering is, pain is, grief is, all the things that we think are bad you know it just is part of the vastness of experience, but it's not all that we are, and
yeah.
what's open and free within it is also is right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like
Yeah.
unneeded suffering as well, can fall away that like they talk about the first and second arrow. The first arrow of suffering, is the visceral felt sense of pain, like we see someone we love hurting, it hurts us,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
And like as you said, we're all connected and there's always people in pain on this planet and we can viscerally feel that. Like that is part of our humanity. Yes,
Yeah.
in that moment we're still open and free, but that reconciliation, but to to be able to say yes to that, to be able to welcome that in without adding that extra layer, that second arrow of suffering, which is essentially the mind, creating stories about how things should be, how things shouldn't be, labeling, judging, etc. And all of that acts as an extra layer of friction, of suffering on top of the visceral pain.
Hmm.
So if we strip
Yes.
that away and just experience the pain raw as it is, in its
Hmm.
actuality, immediate now.
Hmm.
That is still pain and that never goes away. In my
Hmm.
experience anyway.
No, and why would you want it to?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you have a dog, I have a dog.
Yeah.
And even with animals who don't have a separate self sense, they suffer. There's suffering there. There's not a personal self suffering, but suffering is there, right? It can be. it'll flow in and out whenever it comes. Like they might be lonely and miss you crazily when you're gone.
Yeah,
There's all kinds of moments they might be in pain. So
exactly.
it's like it's part of life. The Buddha also said suffering is part of life.
Yeah, exactly. And I once heard Adya talk about, like the two movements, like moving beyond suffering, waking up out of suffering. But then he talked about the second movement. He's like, you're not being liberated from suffering, but you're returning to liberate the suffering itself, to feel it
Mhm.
fully. And he kind of
Yeah.
gives yourself back in to this experience. And so what we're really
Mhm.
talking about is the embodiment aspect, of
Mhm.
the awakening process. And so,
Yeah,
where we can meet our humanity with and our wounds and the suffering and the pain with love and presence, and that's what transforms the suffering itself.
exactly. So it's a good completion of our talk in a way, a circle in that, I mean, and you can add what you want, but I just for me it's like we've done a sort of a circle
Yeah.
of why awakening, what, as we interpreted it, is helpful to actually living and being human and how it helps be here.
Mm.
And it doesn't make it to where we need to even disappear anything, any experience, because there's this resource that comes, deep resource that comes from knowing what we really are, which is, um, and it's not a belief, it's actually an experiential understanding that at the center of us, if anything, is it's empty. And it's not this thing that goes, oh, at the center of everything is empty. It's just, it gets integrated so much so that that emptiness is always meeting content and is just co-rising, as they say, in the moment. And it's doing it so naturally.
Yeah. Exactly. Beautiful. So thanks so much, Susanna. That was a wonderful conversation. And you're right, it kind of tied
Yeah.
itself into a neat little circle.
Yeah, we did. Thank you too, Matt, for your experience. Yeah.
So I'll put all the details below about Susanna. She said she does private sessions and stuff if anyone's interested. And thanks again for joining me, and thanks to all our listeners.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Be well.